I cannot speak. Elections cost money anyway, even for the candidates, for the political parties, and everybody else. But I do know what we can. Quite honestly, we just try to be a little bit more efficient in handling things. But it's something that we take into consideration. Fortunately, some of the funding gaps have been filled by development partners, and they've been very, very useful to us in the past, and they've also equally shown their support for now. It's a huge challenge indeed for everybody.
Okay, Mr. Uzi, in the past weeks, INEC has received over 100 applications from associations who are seeking to, transform into political parties. We already have 68 political parties registered. Out of this 108, about 33 of them are, proceeding to the next stage. Is INEC worried about, the number of political parties, particularly when it comes to elections where you have to print out the logos and, of these political parties? Is INEC worried about this?
Well, even if we are worried, we have to deal with it because the law allows for it. Recall that when INEC tried to restrain or restrict the criteria for registration of political parties, the case went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said you have no right to do that, and it was hailed by a lot of people saying, open up the political space. People should have choices, and it's contrary to democratic tenets for you not to have as many parties as possible. And if you go to Republic of Benin and Niger, places like that, they actually have more parties than we do. So we must learn to manage what we have.
So how do you intend to manage?
You had said about 108, but more associations have indicated interest, so many more might even come on board to put in the applications. And the law, the Constitution allows them to do so, but we just have to stop 6 months to the general elections. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge we have to meet. It's a legal duty, a constitutional responsibility to ensure that each and every party is given the opportunity and enjoys all the rights and the privileges that the party should enjoy.
You said you are ready to manage. How do you intend to manage this?
Like we have always done. Ensure that all monitor as many conventions as we can, monitor all their activities, monitor all their campaigns. When it's a question of submission of list of candidates, receive all lists that any political party is prepared to submit to us, just like we have always done. We'll cope with it. And
there's this email, let me quickly check it, from Anilke Chinedu, is saying, please ask, is directing it to Mr. Chidenwafo, if there's plan for those of us in the diaspora to vote from here. We are very passionate about this election and would like to actively participate.
Incidentally, I will answer it this way. I personally was a member of a committee set up by the Commission for that diaspora. However, the law as is has not given us that opportunity to do that. Whenever the law is amended to allow the diaspora to vote, we as a Commission we already have a committee that is working and planning for it. So my brother, INEC is proactive on that. We are waiting. Whenever the law allows that, we will move on. But for now, the law do not allow that.
Mr. Osaje-Ozie, there are those who are concerned about INEC and the seeming rhetorics, because this idea of we'll manage the situation as best as we can has been the conversation, maybe the same line from 1999 when the new INEC, marks the word new, relative here, started out. I mean, when we came back to democracy. So what's the guarantee that anything will change as we go forward?
Well, first of all, it's not like a new or old INEC. INEC was established in 1998 by an act of the National Assembly decree, became an act of the National Assembly and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999. But I'm not aware of any challenges with political parties. When I say we'll manage as best as we can, we will have to deal with as many parties as are registered. And I'm not aware, except if you want to correct me or draw my attention to facts where we had issues with management of political parties and their rights to the ballot and things like that. None that I know of.
So the fact that many of these political parties haven't won any seat in any assembly or local government election, they've not won any seat whatsoever. They've not won any election, local government, state, or federal. Does not concern INEC I mean, in the cost of, because one of the things that INEC is supposed to do was supposed to monitor the political parties and how they operate, and then probably put in some suggestions, even to the whatever quarters they might need to. Doesn't it concern INEC in any way?
Well, look, we are only concerned with our mandate given to us by the Constitution and Electoral Act. If political parties, it's not up till very recently, it was not mandatory for political parties to field candidates or to win seats. There's a provision in the Electoral Act, came in, I think it's 2010, where it says, look, you can be deregistered if you don't win a seat in a general election. But there is also a court judgment stating that based on that, INEC decided to deregister some political parties. But my understanding of that court judgment, which is an appeal, by the way, is something like that is unconstitutional because it's not a condition stated or stipulated in the Constitution. So you cannot do that. And the court judgment restored quite a number of the parties that had been deregistered by the Commission on that basis. So as much as possible, we should stick to the laws of the land. We cannot deviate, we cannot go out of it. But yes, we can make recommendations for amendments or reform of the Electoral Act when the opportunity arises.
Have you made some of these recommendations?
Well, as to the number of parties, no, we have not. Taking a cue from the judgment of the Supreme Court, we did not make any, as far as I'm aware, any suggestions on what to do with the issue of number of parties. But current thinking, and I have seen some of the proposals before the National Assembly, is that, well, yes, allow as many parties as possible to thrive, but limit access to the ballot. There should be conditions for which there should be access to the ballot so that it will make the process more manageable. There will be fewer parties gaining access to the ballot. They might be functioning as political parties, but they will not be on the ballot.
Okay, we'll just take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be looking more into INEC, you know, in terms of public trust. What are you doing to ensure that the public have, you know, utmost trust in whatever INEC is doing? We'll be back in a moment. Let's talk about public trust. When it comes to elections, public trust is very, very key. And when people cast their vote, they want it to count. They want it to count. So how are you going to assure Nigerians that indeed, when it's time for that election and they go out to vote, we're all talking about register, collect your PVC, they go out to vote, how will their votes count?
Thank you very much. That's a fundamental question. In everything we do, we realize that two important ingredients is that we must build the confidence of the people. We must build trust. Regrettably, in the past there's been a trust deficit, and there is a trust deficit between a lot of public government institutions and the public they seek to serve. We don't take this for granted at all. We try to, first of all, make our processes as transparent as possible. And how do we do this? We must consult widely with our stakeholders. We've identified quite a large group of stakeholders, the voters themselves, the political parties, candidates, security agencies, traditional rulers, religious leaders, all these, even the CX, all these we regard as our stakeholders. And on a quarterly basis, we meet with the media, we meet with CSOs, we meet with security agencies on a quarterly basis, and we're quite faithful. Just this week, we had the first quarter meetings with our major stakeholders. Before the elections, go ahead and meet with traditional leaders, we meet with religious leaders and everything else. And we continue to engage with the media to get our processes known to the people. And these are your rights, these are your responsibilities. And we partner with CSOs especially to deliver messages and get to places we cannot get to. Partnerships are very important to us. We must take every opportunity to keep on building that trust, communicate with the public. This is my third visit. Thank you for the invitations to channels this week alone. I've been here first thing in the morning for sunrise. I've been here at News at 10, at 10:30 at night, and 8:30 this morning I was in your studios. It's all part of the thing to communicate with the public, tell them what we're doing, answer their questions. As we get closer to major activities, we do town hall meetings, we meet with people, trying to bridge that gap. And we have an Citizens Contact Center where you can reach us with a hotline, on Facebook, on Twitter, and by email to our website. These are some of the initiatives, apart from coming to our office, and we'll try to answer your questions. These are some of the initiatives we try to build. And you will agree with me that, especially in the last couple of election cycles, in 2011, 2015, our elections have gotten much, much better. Introduction of technology is another thing to show that we limit the number of human interferences in the process. We tend to trust technology a lot more, and we have shown with the card reader, for example, that technology can be a very, very useful tool in building trust, in building confidence, and improving the process.
Mr. Osaje-Ozie, you said something that in the past there's been issues of trust, but INEC is doing something about it. Now you're trying to make your processes transparent. Please explain this. So Mark Darlington writes us, and he says his wife went to Karo area of Lagos, Karo, Abuja, to register at the INEC office. And the wife was asked to pay money to settle, his words. Let me read it. My wife went to register for PVC. The first day she was told she came late. She left and went back the following day, and she was still told that they finished issuing numbers to people, but she can be given a number if she can settle. How do you expect the people to trust INEC officials? INEC, if its officials will be asking money for settlement for just registration, don't you think that will also affect, they could be asked to settle for votes during elections?
Well, corruption is an endemic thing in our society, and we very, very seriously frown at it. And I can tell you several measures have been taken to discipline staff who've been caught in that nasty web. But we're Nigerians. We're products of our society. That doesn't excuse it, but we try to deal with anybody, any of our officials, no matter how low, no matter how high, who gets involved in any malpractice, corruptive thing, or any exercise like that. We encourage people to report, give us when that happened and the station where it happened, and it will be investigated. I've had some reports on our social media handles, and we send a message back. Of course, usually they deny the thing, and I have a particular instance where somebody did. When I got caused an investigation to be done, it was in Lagos, coincidentally, and it's in the local government office in that particular area where we're doing registration. It's situated within a local government office. Apparently, it turned out that a security man, not a staff of INEC, a security man at that local government was offering his services to assist people in shunting the queue by taking money. We frown at that. Any staff of us was subject to discipline.
Okay, maybe what Paul is saying here, this is another email from Paul Hister, and he's saying, why hasn't INEC thought of installing CCTVs all over INEC registration centers in Nigeria? He's talking about, to curb the registration of illegitimate voters. Is this something that INEC may want to explore?
Well, I think, Chidi, maybe you answered that, but first of all, he's told about the constraints of resources in doing that one, and maybe you want to throw more light on...
Yeah, for now, if we have about 8,800 plus as ward registration, I want to do registration in this ward, will you get CCTV to all these areas based on the fund? Technically, we can do that, but do we have the fund? For now, we don't. There could be in future when registration have stabilized where people will just walk into our local government offices to register, where a lot of people have been registered. In that sense, it could be considered, and the fund may be available. But for now, fund is a problem. Technically, it's possible to do that, but we don't have the funds to do that. So we'll begin to use other means to check that. Thank you.